Benaiah's story takes us back to ancient times, where loyalty and bravery were rare qualities, especially in times of turmoil and change. Benaiah, one of Israel's greatest warriors, is remembered for his unwavering courage and his devotion to both King David and Solomon. Amidst a backdrop of intense battles and intrigue in the royal court, Benaiah stood out as a fearless and faithful leader, someone in whom the kings could trust without reservation. His life was marked by heroic deeds, which made him a legend in his time. He faced lions, giants, and enemy warriors with a determination that seemed supernatural. Benaiah not only won victories in battles, but also contributed to the peace and stability of the kingdom. His trajectory shows us a man who did not just seek glory in fights, but the honor that comes from loyalty and commitment to what is just and divine. Today, we explore the story of this remarkable warrior, uncovering the moments that defined his life and his journey alongside Israel's greatest kings. Follow this narrative to discover how Benaiah, driven by faith and honor, influenced the destiny of a nation and became an eternal example of loyalty and courage. Benaiah was born into a family deeply marked by spirituality and devotion to the sacred precepts of Israel. His father, Jehoiada, was a Levite priest, a position of great respect and responsibility, being one of the men chosen to serve directly in the Tabernacle, the place where God's presence dwelt among the people. The Tabernacle was more than a place of worship. It was the spiritual heart of Israel, where sacrifices, ceremonies, and prayers were held that kept the people's connection with God alive. Being a Levite, therefore, was not just a trade. It was a vocation that demanded purity, dedication, and unrestricted obedience to the divine will. Within the tribe of Levi, the Kohathites, the family of Benaiah had an even more unique role. They were responsible for caring for the most sacred objects in the tabernacle, including the Ark of the Covenant, the altar of incense, and the table of showbread. The simple fact of being close to these sacred objects brought an enormous burden of spiritual responsibility. Therefore, from an early age, Benaiah grew up with a deep understanding of the reverence owed to God and the value of dedicated and faithful service. He knew that his lineage called him to a serious and solemn commitment to sacred laws and traditions, something that would influence his entire life. However, what made Benaiah stand out among the rest was not just his priestly heritage, but the rare combination of his faith and his exceptional skills as a warrior. He was not just an ordinary soldier. He carried within him the courage of a fearless fighter and the reverence of a man of faith. This duality made him a unique figure in David's court, as he not only possessed physical strength, but also a soul shaped by God's principles and commandments. For him, the battlefield was a place where he could express his devotion in a practical way, fighting in the name of the kingdom that God had established for Israel. In this way, Benaiah's priestly lineage brought balance to his role as a warrior. He did not fight for personal ambition or for glory. Their victories were dedicated to a greater purpose. His courage was fueled by the conviction that each battle won was a way of honoring the God of his ancestors. This meant that he did not allow himself to be corrupted by the power or political interests that often permeated the king's courts. His mission went beyond war. He carried with him a commitment to represent the character of a true servant of God, someone who acted with integrity and justice, even in times of conflict and uncertainty. Benaiah's spiritual heritage, therefore, shaped not only his worldview, but also his stance as a leader. He became a living example that a warrior need not just be a man at arms, but also someone guided by a higher purpose and integrity. He understood that his position required more than combat skill. It required him to maintain a constant connection with God so that his actions were aligned with the principles of righteousness and faithfulness. Thus, Benaiah was respected not only as a commander, but as a reference of faith and courage in the court of Israel, a man who served his king and his God with total devotion. The name Benaiah, of Hebrew origin, carries a powerful symbolism that goes beyond a mere designation. It is almost a prophecy about the destiny and mission of whoever carries it. This name is formed by joining Ben, which means son, and Yah, an abbreviation of God's sacred name, Yahweh. Thus, Benaiah can be understood as Son of God or one to whom God is merciful. This meaning was not something trivial in Hebrew culture. For the ancient Israelites, names were considered bearers of blessings, promises, and spiritual identities, representing each person's character and purpose in life. Thus, Benaiah's name not only identified him as an individual, but reflected a blessing, a mission, and a responsibility before God and men. This name was not only an honor, but a constant reminder that Benaiah must live up to this divine inheritance. As Son of God, he carried a sacred responsibility, a calling to act in accordance with God's principles and will, seeking to be just, faithful, and courageous. In every challenge he faced, whether in battle or at court, he was aware that his actions must reflect this special title. For him, the name was not just a word, but a source of inspiration and strength, a reminder that God was present in his life, leading and strengthening him. This spiritual connection was fundamental to his journey. Benaiah knew that, as one to whom God is merciful, each victory and each act of bravery were not just personal achievements, but expressions of divine grace and protection. He recognized that his courage and strength came from God, and the meaning of his name reminded him, every day, of this special relationship. In moments of great difficulty, this certainty brought him peace and motivation, allowing him to face the biggest challenges with confidence. Benaiah was not just a warrior. He was a man of deep faith, whose trust in God gave him uncommon courage and unshakable stability. This name also distinguished him among the leaders of Israel, as Benaiah acted in a unique way. He did not seek personal glory or empty ambition. For him, his mission was to honor God in everything he did. The name Son of God was a constant reminder that he was there to fulfill a greater purpose. This perspective led him to serve King David and later King Solomon with a rare dedication, guided not only by loyalty to the king, but by loyalty to God himself. His devotion to his people, his unshakable faith, and his integrity became his brand, a living reflection of his name and his commitment to the Creator. Thus, the name Benaiah became a testimony to God's mercy and power in action. Every action he took, every decision he made as a commander or defender of Israel, was an expression of this spiritual connection, showing the people that he was guided by divine purpose. In his life and in his name, Benaiah was a living expression of God's grace, a warrior who not only possessed physical strength, but also a spiritual strength that made him incomparable. In this way, he stood out as one of Israel's most respected and inspiring figures, leaving a legacy that echoes divine faithfulness and mercy. Benaiah's fame as a warrior did not come by chance. It was built on heroic deeds that even the most fearless warriors would hesitate to perform. One of his most notable feats occurred on an especially cold day where the ground was covered in snow. In this scenario, Benaiah found a fierce lion trapped in a well. Imagine the weight of the challenge. A wild animal, known for its brutal strength and agility, trapped in a tight, slippery space. For many, the decision would be simple: step back and avoid confrontation. But for Benaiah, this was unthinkable. He descended into the well, determined to face the beast face to face. With the ice hampering his movements and the lion's menacing roar resounding, he needed courage that few possessed. But Benaiah, guided by faith and his inner strength, defeated the lion, proving that there was no challenge too great for a man committed to his mission. This act, in addition to highlighting his skill, demonstrated that he had unusual bravery, worthy of a true hero. But Benaiah's achievements did not stop there. He also faced warriors who were feared for their skills and strength. One of the most famous was an Egyptian giant, described as a man of impressive stature and armed with an immense spear, comparable to the shaft of a loom, a symbol of strength and intimidation. Many would think that, faced with an enemy like this, Benaiah would be at a disadvantage. However, he was not intimidated. Armed only with a staff, he approached the giant, disarmed him, and, in an unexpected twist, used his opponent's own spear against him, defeating him in spectacular fashion. These feats not only reinforced his fame, but also solidified his position as one of the most trusted warriors in the kingdom of Israel. For David and all the people, Benaiah was a living example of courage and skill, a man who faced any adversity with faith and determination. These acts of bravery ensured that his name was remembered and respected, making him a living legend who inspired everyone around him. In David's court, Benaiah quickly stood out not only for his skill with weapons, but, most importantly, for his unwavering loyalty to the king. David, who himself knew well the value of a loyal and courageous warrior, observed Benaiah's qualities closely and, over time, saw in him someone he could trust without reservation. Recognizing Benaiah's fearless spirit and upright character, David appointed him commander of his bodyguard, a position of extreme trust and importance. The king's personal guard was a select group composed only of the most loyal and skilled warriors, responsible for protecting the sovereign in times of peace and war. Being the commander of this group was more than an honor. It was a task that required not only combat skills but also absolute loyalty. Benaiah, with his courage already proven in previous battles, assumed this responsibility with total devotion, understanding that David's protection was vital for the kingdom of Israel. He knew that his role required much more than physical bravery. It required a commitment that extended to the very essence of his being. Benaiah served David with everything he had, being his shield in times of danger and a faithful advisor in times of uncertainty. He was the kind of man who inspired confidence, someone who other warriors respected and followed loyally. His presence at the king's side brought security to the palace, as everyone knew that he would never allow anything or anyone to threaten David. And unlike many who sought favors and positions of power at court, Benaiah was not motivated by personal ambitions, but by the certainty that protecting David was protecting the greater good of Israel. This combination of strength and devotion made him one of David's most trusted allies, someone the king could call on at any time and who would always be ready to do his duty. For David, Benaiah was more than a commander. He was a symbol of loyalty, a man he knew he could count on in the most difficult times, in the days of battle and in the nights of peace. This unbreakable loyalty of Benaiah not only secured his position at court, but also elevated him as an example of commitment and courage to all around him. Benaiah's loyalty was put to the test in one of the most turbulent moments in David's life: the revolt of his own son, Absalom. Absalom, charismatic and ambitious, had won the support of many in the kingdom, and his rebellion deeply shook the power structure in Israel. He not only threatened David's reign, but also the stability and unity of the people themselves. For David, seeing his son plot against him and take Jerusalem was a deep pain, and he was forced to abandon the city, seeking safety in the desert with a group of men who were still loyal to him. Benaiah was among these men. At a time when many might have questioned his loyalty, he stood firm by David's side. Even as Absalom's strength and influence seemed to grow and many of the king's supporters deserted, Benaiah did not hesitate. He understood that his loyalty to David went beyond his circumstances. It was a sacred commitment, rooted in his faith and his sense of justice. The abandonment of Jerusalem was a painful episode, but Benaiah, with her firm and dedicated presence, brought silent comfort to the king. He was there, a faithful soldier, ready to face whatever came. Absalom's rebellion culminated in a decisive battle, where forces loyal to David faced Absalom's rebel army. During these days of uncertainty and struggle, Benaiah once again showed his bravery, fighting alongside David and protecting the king with his own life if necessary. When the conflict ended and Absalom was captured and killed, Benaiah's loyalty had been amply demonstrated. He had not only fulfilled his duty as a warrior, he had demonstrated the strength of his commitment to the king in times of betrayal and adversity. This moment cemented Benaiah's reputation as a loyal soldier, someone who would not stray from his path even in his darkest hours. His unwavering loyalty to David was more than a commanding stance. It was the expression of a rare and precious commitment, something that inspired everyone around him. In the end, Benaiah emerged not only as a respected warrior, but as the example of faithfulness that would remain in history, a man who, in the midst of darkness, chose to stand by his king and his mission. After Solomon's coronation as king of Israel, there were still remnants of opposition and threats to the stability of the kingdom, especially from figures who had demonstrated loyalty to Adonijah or who directly disregarded royal command. Solomon knew that to establish his government solidly, he would need to eliminate these threats. It was then that he entrusted Benaiah with an extremely delicate and crucial mission: the execution of Joab, Adonijah, and Shimei, three figures whose history of betrayal or rebellion represented a constant risk to the peace of the kingdom. Solomon's brother Adonijah had attempted to proclaim himself king before Solomon's coronation, but after his brother's accession, he initially submitted. However, Adonijah did not abandon his ambition. By asking for the hand of Abishag, David's concubine, he hinted that he still had intentions of taking the throne, as in the culture of the time, marrying a royal concubine symbolized a claim to power. To Solomon, this was clear evidence of betrayal, and he ordered Benaiah to eliminate Adonijah, putting an end to the threat. After the long years of David's reign, Israel was going through a phase of great expectation and tension. The king, already advanced in age, had children who aspired to the throne, and this transition of power was a delicate issue, fraught with ambition and conflicting interests. For many of the princes and influential men at court, the end of David's reign represented an opportunity to rise to power, and few disguised their intentions. Among these suitors was Adonijah, one of David's oldest and most charismatic sons. He possessed an imposing posture and a natural ability to attract followers, which made him a strong candidate. Knowing his father's advanced age, Adonijah realized that if he acted quickly, he could secure the throne for himself before others tried. Adonijah took advantage of David's moment of weakness to launch an ambitious offensive, gathering a circle of influential supporters that included Joab, the powerful army commander, and Abiathar, an important priest. These strong allies made his claim even more threatening, as they represented both military strength and religious influence. Adonijah, confident in his position, organized a ceremonial banquet where he proclaimed himself king in front of his supporters. This gesture was more than symbolic. It was an act of asserting power that could divide the kingdom and directly challenge Israel's political stability. His decision, however, went against the will of David, who, inspired by divine guidance, had promised the throne to Solomon. Solomon did not have the same military support as Adonijah, but he had faithful men at his side, and more importantly, the support and promise of his father. David, upon learning of Adonijah's movement, decided to act quickly to avoid a civil war that could tear Israel apart. In a public and decisive ceremony, David anointed Solomon as his rightful successor, ensuring that everyone, including the leaders and the people, knew his choice and God's guidance. This moment was crucial in preventing Adonijah's plan from being consolidated, and Benaiah's presence was decisive. Benaiah, one of the most loyal and courageous men in David's army, played a key role in the transition. As the king's commander and bodyguard, he was in charge of ensuring that David's succession plan came to fruition without incident. Solomon's coronation ceremony needed to take place under complete security, and Benaiah took on the responsibility of protecting the new king and ensuring the legitimacy of his accession to the throne. He was at Solomon's side throughout the ceremony, reaffirming his unconditional support, recognizing him as the legitimate heir, and ensuring that everyone knew the seriousness of this succession. When news of Solomon's coronation reached Adonijah and his followers, the impact was devastating. Adonijah realized that his plan of usurpation had failed and that he was now in a vulnerable position, as Solomon had not only the support of the army and people, but also the protection of faithful and fearless men like Benaiah. Adonijah's fear was justified, as Benaiah, with his firm stance and unbreakable loyalty, demonstrated that any attempt at rebellion would be promptly put down. Benaiah, in fact, became a central figure in this transition, not only consolidating Solomon's reign, but reinforcing his own reputation as a man of integrity, courage, and absolute loyalty. He did not allow himself to be seduced by the power or favors that Adonijah could offer him. Rather, he maintained his loyalty to David's legacy and the divine purpose that guided Israel's future. For Benaiah, Solomon's succession was not just a political issue. It was a call to fulfill God's will and preserve peace in Israel. In this way, Benaiah helped ensure that the succession was legitimate and firm, strengthening Solomon's reign from day one and preserving order in the kingdom. He was, without a doubt, a cornerstone in the construction of this new reign, an example of integrity in a time of intense political turmoil. His loyalty and determination were essential for Solomon to rule in peace, focusing on expanding the kingdom and establishing Israel as a nation of prosperity and stability. Thus, Benaiah not only consolidated the beginning of Solomon's rule, but also preserved David's legacy and the continuity of divine purpose for Israel. Solomon next turned his attention to Joab, commander of the army during David's reign, who had supported Adonijah's attempt to usurp the throne. Joab, realizing the imminent danger, took refuge in the tabernacle and clung to the altar, seeking divine protection. But Solomon knew that he could not leave this betrayal unpunished and ordered Benaiah to execute him, even in the sacred sanctuary. For Benaiah, fulfilling this order was an extreme proof of loyalty, as he knew it was not just a political issue, but one of justice. He complied, eliminating Joab and ensuring the army's complete allegiance to the new king. Finally, there was Shimei, a man who had insulted and cursed David during Absalom's escape, but whom David had spared on the condition that he remain in Jerusalem. Years later, Shimei broke this oath, thus defying the king's order. Solomon, upon learning of the violation, interpreted it as direct disloyalty, a challenge to his authority. Again, he summoned Benaiah to carry out the sentence. Benaiah's actions were harsh, but essential for the consolidation of Solomon's kingdom. He demonstrated absolute loyalty, willing to carry out royal orders, even when those orders involved difficult decisions and harsh actions. These executions symbolized the end of internal disputes and the risk of division in Israel, ensuring peace and the continuity of David's lineage under Solomon's rule. Benaiah, with his unwavering loyalty and courage, not only protected the stability of the kingdom, but also reaffirmed the unbreakable commitment he had to his king and to the peace of Israel. Benaiah's life is a powerful testament to courage and loyalty that has resonated through the generations. In a time of turbulence and political change, he not only survived the challenges, but became a pillar of trust and security for both David and Solomon. Benaiah was more than a skilled warrior. He was a leader of integrity who placed the good of the kingdom and God's will above personal interests. Every battle he faced and every difficult decision he made showed that his strength came not just from skill at arms, but from a deep faith and an unwavering commitment to justice. In politics, Benaiah played an essential role. His presence was vital to the transition of power between David and Solomon, and he proved himself steadfast and faithful when others hesitated or sought advantage. He was an advocate of peace and order, ensuring that Solomon's reign was established on a solid and secure foundation. For many, he personified the courage of a soldier and the loyalty of a true servant of God, someone who understood the value of duty and the importance of devotion in times of uncertainty. Benaiah's legacy is eternal, placing him among the great biblical heroes. His life and actions left an indelible mark on the history of Israel, and his example of courage and dedication continues to inspire generations. Benaiah represents the type of leader and warrior who serves with his heart and mind focused on what is just and honorable. At each stage of his journey, he showed that true strength is in the spirit and that true loyalty is that which resists time and trials. Thank you for staying until the end. Stay with God.